All right, this is a part 2 to our webinar on succeeding with Outbound in 2025. Delighted to be joined again by Mark Colgan. And this time we have Nia Woodhouse joining us from our original lineup list. Nia, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Amazing. So we had an incredibly action-packed webinar. The hour ran by all too quickly, and we didn't get to an awful lot of the questions that people had submitted. So Mark and Nia have very kindly agreed to come back, and we're going to do an incredibly rapid-fire round of trying to answer as many of those questions as possible in the next 27 minutes. All right, so guys, on your marks, I guess. So the first question is, what's the most effective / accurate / efficient method for building lead lists? Mark, I know this is an area that you've dived into a lot, so I'll go to you first.
Cool. Well, it really does depend. It depends on who you're trying to prospect to and where they are. So there'll be certain databases which are better for certain companies. So if you're looking for startups that have raised a round of funding, then Crunchbase would probably be a better place to start. Then you have the kind of all-in-one databases. Apollo is pretty good, and it has good filters. But sometimes these filters don't always align with exactly your ICP or persona. The way that I like to approach it is to think, how do I first of all find the companies? Once I have my list of companies, then I try and find the people within those companies. So I take a two-step approach: companies first, or accounts, and then people.
Perfect. Nia?
Mark, you took the words right out my mouth. So ultimately, you've got your ICP and you want that to be as tight as possible, because that's going to really save you time. And ultimately, there are tools out there that can help you do this really accurately. But when you're starting out, you might not have budget to get all these tools in. You might not know where to go first. So you can do this from SalesNav. You can do it from a tool like this, and you're working backwards from your account. You're probably going to have to cross-reference it with a couple of different tools, because there might be some accounts that slip through the net. But knowing the filters of what you're looking for is super important. So when you've got that ICP, you can find the account and then reverse engineer to then find the contacts within that account. And it depends on who you're reaching out to. It might be that there's multiple decision makers that you can reach out to, but the more contacts that you have per account, the wider the net that you can cast and the more conversations you can generate.
Amazing. Thanks, Nia. And actually, just one quick tip that Mark, you gave me a few months ago, is that once you've got your lead list, you cannot accept that even once you've exported it, and even if those original data providers say that the contact details are validated, you should re-verify that through a tool, something like Lead Magic, which is what you recommended, and that will help make sure your lists that you've built are actually cleaned, and you're going to improve your deliverability and maintain your domain health for longer as well. So not quite asked directly, but a good tip, I think. Okay, I can't remember whether we got to this one on the webinar, but just in case, I think it's an interesting question. What's the best prospecting approach for an industry that isn't very active on LinkedIn? Nia, I'll give you the gift of going first on this one.
Thank you. So I talk about this a lot with my colleague Tom Boston, because he's a big advocate for getting your prospects in a place where you want them. So I have a very phone first approach. I will contact anyone over the phone first, but ultimately I want to become an expert in my field and show people that what I'm talking about is relevant to their world. And even if we think that they're not active on LinkedIn, we can't say a whole industry isn't. And Tom gave me some really good advice that when you're selling to an industry where you feel like they're not as active as other industries on LinkedIn, you can guide them there. And that can be in your outreach, in your email signature, in your PSs, in the mail that you're sending out. PS, I made this video and thought of you, or saw this video and thought of you, and you're directing your prospects to your page. And if other people in your space aren't doing that, then that's how you can stand out from the crowd.
Perfect. Thanks, Nia. And Mark, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, for me, if my prospects aren't on LinkedIn, then I will just try and focus on the channel that they are on. So everybody has email. Not everybody uses a work phone, but in certain industries they will. So if you think people like facilities managers, or I used to sell into data center managers, and they're often inside a data center where they're not even allowed to bring their phone and they're not really on LinkedIn actively. So cold calling was the best, but we would pick to call them before work and after work, or in those hours towards the end of the day and beginning of the day. But the advice really is like to fish where the fish are. If they're not that active on LinkedIn, yes, you can spend some time there, but I would just really focus on the channels where you know you can reach them.
Brilliant. Really great advice. And then another question on channels. Let's stick to this. If not email, then what? So this is different challenge, right? Instead of you can't reach me on LinkedIn, if email's not working, what one tool would you swap in for email? Mark, you go first. Nia, I think I know your answer already.
I don't want to steal Nia's answer. I know she's going to say the phone. I agree. But let me just give another answer in case if there's another option other than the phone. So I like to think about, well, where do these people spend time online, or where do they spend time offline? So I live in Portugal, and in Lisbon, we had the Web Summit conference. So there was a load of people here in the startup world and investors that were all in one place for some time. Your industry that you sell into will have in-person events, so that could be a place to go to, although it's quite hard and it takes a lot of energy to go to those events year in, year out. But there will be certain months of the year where there are going to be an event where a lot of your prospects are in one place. So I would run a campaign around one of those events. But Nia.
Yeah. Phone all day, every day, but I'm also a big advocate of anything creative. So do a handwritten note. I appreciate it takes a bit more time, but if you think about how long it takes to write an email, write a handwritten note and get them in the post, and people just don't expect it. So you are going to stand out from the crowd. But if I had to choose one, it would obviously be my phone.
I love it. And for me, so some great creative ideas there, right? Get yourself to industry events, try direct mail, gifting, and so on. But even though we've just previously answered the question of what would you do if they're not on LinkedIn, most people are quite active, most industries are. So if you can't do email, my first channel that I would consider would be a direct LinkedIn outreach approach. And I'm finding that super effective, particularly compared to email for certain industries. Okay, this is an interesting one. So I want to really define what type of lead magnets would work for an industrial type consultancy, e.g. mining, oil and gas, etc. Feel free if you have a creative idea that you would want to jump in with this one. You don't both have to answer every question. Mark,
take it, Mark.
Sure.
Okay.
So a lead magnet, or a good lead magnet, you should help somebody solve a challenge or problem that they're facing. And ideally, it's related to the service that you're offering. So let's just say that I offer outbound sales strategy, and I'll build your tech stack and I'll send emails for you. I don't do that, but let's just say I do. A lead magnet that I could offer is, hey, let me review your cold email, your current cold email. So I'm not doing the whole of my service or offering, but I am doing a little bit, and I can at least give some feedback that will help somebody be better off than where they were before they worked with me or before they used that lead magnet. So oil and gas, I don't know much about it at all, but there will be people who have roles, who have struggles and challenges and things that really, really annoy them. So maybe you can solve for those. I know there's a very, very popular lead magnet that happens every time Web Summit here is in Lisbon. And that's somebody puts together a spreadsheet of all of the free happy hour and networking events. Now, that's a great lead magnet, but they're not going to be very qualified people, because everybody just wants free beer and alcohol and to know where the parties are. So I think as well, when the iPads first came out, you would go to a conference and at a booth, people were offering to put your email address in to win an iPad. Pointless as well, especially because people are there just to win the iPad, not to find out about your service. So the short answer is, like, focus on a problem that you can solve or part solve for the prospects that you want to reach out to, and then offer them that.
Awesome. I've got two thoughts that I would add. So one is look at things that they're paying for. So things like benchmarking. I bet people are paying in that industry for data, benchmarking reports, other things of value, and then reverse engineer that back into a way that you can deliver it, with an economics that makes sense for your business, but a free version, right? So it still adds a ton of value. People are willing to pay for it. Give them a free version. That's going to act as a really great lead magnet, and often in bigger corporate environments, some kind of data-driven benchmarking report is well received. Or the second idea is in slightly more traditional industries like mining and oil and gas, it's still a very face-to-face driven type of environment. So bring people together, right? Put on a breakfast event, put on a small invite-only dinner, get people together. That's a great lead magnet, right? It's not super scalable, but if it's very targeted at your highest value ICP, then it could be a really great way to drive qualified leads. Nia, sorry, I think you were also going to chip in.
I was basically going to say that all of these great ideas come back to the same point, that you're presenting yourself as an expert. And if you can show in a very valuable, key way that you can help them overcome a challenge, like Mark C said, that you then become the expert, and then it makes it so much easier to then generate that conversation.
Definitely. Yeah. Just, you've got to know what do they care about, right? What challenge, and then provide that value. Okay, amazing. This is a really interesting one. I'm going to go to you first on it, Nia, because I think it's around kind of coaching. So someone's asked, how can I become more consultative on my calls following a 20-year fast-paced lead gen call center career?
Interesting. So that fast-paced environment will have provided them with invaluable experience. They'll be super experienced in rejection, in keeping somebody on the phone, in getting next steps booked. But ultimately, the key to be consultative is finding out what challenge does that prospect face, and then asking them, why is that important? Once you've got that information, it's how motivated are they to solve that problem? And do you have a service or a solution that can help them solve that problem? If the answer is no, then you can disqualify, and that is being consultative because you've identified that you can't help them. But if you can help them, it's really understanding what the pain is. Are they motivated to solve it? And can your solution help them overcome it? And if that is the case, tick, 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 then you are a consultative seller. It doesn't matter about experience, tenure in sales. You could do the same year 20 years over, or you can do 1 year where you're absolutely progressing like a rocket ship. It's using those key skills that you've already learned, but making them more about your prospect rather than you.
It's great advice. Mark, anything you'd add to that?
Yeah, so I think, as Nia said, like the fact that you've worked 20 years in a call center, you were way ahead of a lot of sales reps who are even scared to pick up the phone. So you're doing well to begin with. I think two things to think about. One, just think of yourself like a doctor, where you are there to prescribe the medication once you understand what the pain is. So if somebody walks into a doctor and says, I've got a headache, the doctor is going to ask lots of questions to try and understand what is the cause of that headache. It could be that they need new glasses. It could be that they're dehydrated. It could be that they fell over and hit their head. You know, there's lots of different reasons why you might have a headache. So your job in sales is to be that consultant, like a doctor, ask probing questions, open-ended questions, try and understand what their challenges are. And I'd say like the second part to being more consultative is actually having some answers or suggestions for them. Like of every call that you do, or every prospect that you speak to, there might be 1 or 2 bits of advice that you could share, whether that's related to your product or service or not, that will leave them in a better position than before, is another way to be more consultative. Then you come across less salesy and more like somebody who's there to help them, to be expert, as we've answered in a few other questions, and to be their guide, not making yourself the hero, but you're trying to make them the hero.
Yeah, really, really good advice. I'll just offer one other thing, which is, again, you might want to shift the goalposts or your mindset. So if you spent 20 years doing fast-paced, essentially transactional calls, it is all about getting through volume. You need to switch that up to think about, instead of how many meetings can I book, you want to think about how many people can I help, right? So in the doctor's case, if they were actually incentivized on how many patients they saw, they might actually cut down how many questions they're asking and try and just get them through on a conveyor belt. So you really want to switch up the mindset from, okay, how many people can I get through in a day, to how many people can I help, and have a more qualitative mindset. Okay, I've got another interesting one here, which is, does teaching with commercial insights get you a better response rate? I don't have any more context, but I'm guessing the question behind the question is, do I need to add a ton of value and lead with that? Mark, if you want to take that first.
Yeah, I think the context here is that if they're reaching out to people to start conversations with commercial insights, can you get a better response rate? And I believe the answer is yes, you will. Nobody wants to be sold to, but everybody has questions. And if you have some insights, or especially if they are proprietary to you and the business that you work in, or you've got your own sort of analysis of those, that's really valuable. Everybody is looking to find out what everybody else is doing and what's working and what isn't. Back to Mark's point of the in-person events, the main reason why people do that is to, of course, meet other people, but to find out, without being too formal, what's working, what isn't, what challenges you're experiencing. So if I've understood the question correctly, then yes, it will give you better response rates if you lead with that sort of value.
Brilliant. Yeah, anything to add?
I think it's being cautious of what prospects can see through. And if they see sort of generic numbers in their outreach or wild suggestions that you're going to X amount revenue and that sort of thing, people just see through it and they're like, that's not relevant, or I don't believe you. So if you're going to use like numbers and data in your outreach, it has to be relevant to your prospect and it has to be for a reason. And that's how you can start bridging the gap between personalization and relevance. If you've worked with a company who's their direct competitor and you've helped them by X amount, then that is a relevant number and that makes sense to them. But if you're speaking to an SMB company and you're referencing enterprise numbers, it's going to mean nothing. It just looks like spray and pray and it'll likely just get ignored.
Yeah, very, very good advice again. So I've got two questions here that genuinely feel like they were written for each of you. So I've sort of saved this towards the end. Nia, I'll go with you first. So this question is, what are the biggest misconceptions about outbound sales today? And how can we overcome them when pitching to clients? Now, I don't know about the second bit about pitching to clients, but I'd love to know, and maybe this is me adding a little bit here. You guys provide sales coaching, right, as a service fundamentally. I'd love to hear, like, what is it that your coachees are needing help with the most? Like, what are the areas that they're asking for that people might not understand at the moment?
Okay. I would say misconceptions about outbound is that certain channels are dead, and they're just not dead. They're just done poorly. And so sales reps come to us for help when a channel isn't working as effectively as they like. They're not getting the response rates they need for their emails. Their cold calls are falling flat. None of these channels are dead. It's just that sales reps are given a phone and a laptop and they're just like, crack on. So my advice for people in outbound would be, you can learn what channel is going to be best fit for you. Some people are going to be masters at the phone. Some people are going to be great at emailing. Choose which one is most comfortable for you and what gets the best results for you, and then upskill on that. And then you can start sprinkling in your multi-channel approach, because that means you've got variety in your toolkit, but you're going to really master one channel and it's going to work well for you. So I would say the misconception is certain channels are dead, but it's wrong.
Love it. Thanks, dear. Mark, this one definitely feels like it was written for you. So how can freelance sales consultants effectively balance outbound outreach with inbound marketing to create a cohesive sales funnel?
I think the answer there is that you can't really do both properly at the same time. And depending on what stage you are in your freelance career dictates what you're going to focus on. So, for example, inbound marketing, in theory, you'll get lots of qualified leads knocking on your door asking to work with you. That doesn't happen overnight. That takes time and years of putting out your thought leadership, getting into the right place, thinking about distribution in a clever way, and getting in front of your ideal audience. I think one of a big, not a misconception, but a big con is that in the first few years of HubSpot, who were the leaders in inbound marketing, they had 60% of their employees were salespeople. So they actually used Outbound to promote inbound marketing and sell the dream. And I'm not saying they did anything untoward or bad there, but it's the fact that when you are just starting out, the quickest way to start conversations is through Outbound. Over time, once you become more well-known and you've spoken to more people, then you might want to start thinking about inbound marketing. But if you want to do both at the same time, all I'd say is like focus on Outbound, because that's going to get you the results straight away. And then just keep up appearances on social, on LinkedIn, if that's where your audience is. Like be there and be present, but don't think about spending 2 days of a week creating content and posting it on your LinkedIn profile is necessarily going to generate a lot of interest for you at the beginning.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. You've just reminded me of a time when I went to visit HubSpot. This was maybe like 10 years ago in their office in Dublin. And I was genuinely shocked. I was like, what's that bank of desks over there? Why have you got all these outbound salespeople? I thought it was all about inbound. I was completely taken aback. Yeah, very interesting. Okay, we've got not long left. I'm going to ask maybe two quick questions and see if we can get your hot takes on these. So the first one is, I've kind of avoided diving too much into AI in this one, but I can't avoid it entirely. So I think one nuanced question is, how can people use AI but not lose the human touch?
Do you want to go, Nia?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. I promised to tee you up, Nia.
I am happy to go first. So I would initially sprinkle in AI with your written comms with your outbound. So I would write it yourself. And that is the important thing, so that you don't lose what makes you a salesperson. People can see through it when AI have just generated all of your messaging, and use it to get details about accounts and research so you can personalize your messaging, how you can even personalize further to each contact. If you see on their LinkedIn page that they're a rower, use AI to suddenly become a rowing fan. And it's the same with LinkedIn as well with your content. It can help you generate ideas based on ideas that you've already created. That's not losing your touch. It's basically scaling your ideas and your skills so that you're keeping up with the rest of the sales world.
Lovely. And Mark, what's your take?
Yeah, I think the way to look at it is you need to collaborate with AI, not let it replace you 100%. So very similar to what Nia was sharing. But for example, what are the manual tasks that you're spending time doing that could be automated? From a list building point of view, are there tools that use AI to build the list? Or formatting data? Can you use tools that are not strictly AI, but technology to help you speed up that process? Then when it comes to your notes from calls, you can use an AI call recorder that will give you a summary and also output the next steps for you, saving time. In your sales process as well, there might be things that you're reminded of, and because there's AI as a coach going through it. And Nia, obviously you work with a lot more coaches and coachees, but AI coaches as well. If you can't and don't have direct access to a human coach, then could you use AI to help you get better at your cold calls and your openers? And I know there's a whole category of tools coming up now, which is like dedicated to AI coaching, specifically on cold calling.
Nice. I'm going to throw one in here, which is, you've got to take the time to train and coach and inform the AI if you want it to actually go and perform well for you and not just be incredibly generic, right? And I'm seeing so many teams make the same mistake that they did with humans. And Nia, you mentioned it, right? It's like you hire a sales rep, you give them a phone book and a phone, and you say, right, off you go and make us some money, right? No training, no coaching, no frameworks. And then they complain when they're not successful. And it's the exact same thing with AI. People see it as a silver bullet, and they don't put the upfront work in to actually get it to understand the context of their sales motions, their ICP, their business, and so on. If you can do that, then you can start to actually make AI feel more like you and a better representation of your business.
Mark, if I can just add, I think if people say that AI isn't working for them, then the reality is they're just not good enough at prompting yet. And I think unless you're spending 8 hours a day learning prompts and getting better at them and refining them over time, you can't really say that AI isn't helpful. I've spent a lot more time prompting in AI recently, and I'm now getting it to output exactly how I want it. And I'm feeding back in my own version of the output. So I take an output, I rewrite it or edit it slightly and put it back in. So it's learning over time. But when I first used ChatGPT, when it originally first came out, it was awful. And I was like, this is rubbish. It's never going to be able to do these things. And it reminds me of QR codes when they came out about, I don't know, 10 years ago or 8 years ago. Just like, these are useless. Why would we ever want this? But then, you know, a global pandemic comes in and QR codes are now here to stay. You get your menu, you can pay. So I think if you don't think AI is good, or you haven't tried AI for a while for various different things, I would constantly remind yourself that every month, because it improves so quickly, to give it another go, and you'll be surprised how much better it's getting.
Amazing. Yeah, very, very good advice. Okay, last one. I'm conscious we've got about 30 seconds each for this. So of all the things we've talked about, if there is one takeaway that you would urge someone to have going into 2025 to help cut through the noise and improve their outbound, what would it be? Nia, if I go to you first.
I'm obviously going to drink my own champagne and say, get yourself a coach, somebody who's been there, done that, been super successful and can help you navigate, because there's so much noise, and cutting through that, you need somebody who has walked in your shoes. Their history is your future, and that can be somebody internally, externally, but it's important to have someone to help you to make it relevant to you.
Perfect. Mark?
I would say relentlessly focus on solving people's problems. When you solve people's problems, you can cut through the noise because you position yourself as somebody who has the answers. So yeah, relentlessly focus on solving people's problems.
Amazing. I'll finish with just be curious. Keep being curious, keep learning. The world is changing at an unbelievably rapid rate. So the only way to stay on top of it is to stay hungry and curious. Mark, Nia, thank you so much. Unbelievable amounts of value in an incredibly short period of time. Really appreciate it. And thanks for joining us again.
Cool. My pleasure.
Bye.
See you soon.